Foremost means more. More training, more information, more ways to grow your business. Find out what Foremost can mean for you at foremostagent.com. Click on Foremost Means More.
Maurice Greenberg helped build American International Group into the world's largest insurer. Leading by example, he created a unique corporate culture marked by discipline, achievement, profit, and innovation. In this segment of an interview with Wells Media Group's Andy Simpson, Greenberg discusses his very first insurance job and the type of employees he hired to drive AIG and now is hiring at Starr Companies.
Thank you, Mr. Greenberg, for being here with us today. I'd like to start with one of the very first stories you tell. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to relate all of the stories. There are too many good ones. But the first, it was 60 years ago. You had served your country in World War II in Korea. You graduated from New York Law School, and you were looking for a job. You were walking down William Street here in Manhattan, and you came across the office of Continental Casualty. And you went in, and I would love for you to tell us what happened.
Well, sure. But you got to remember, I had just come back from Korea, probably about several days before. So there are two things that you've got to connect with that. One, I still had mud on my boots, essentially. And I was angry. American people at the time, there was very little connection between the Korean War and what was happening back here. It was a forgotten war. 38,000 Americans died in Korea. And it was a bitter war. I was never as cold in my life as that winter that I spent there. So I came back, went down to visit some of the guys I went to law school with. And I just left their office. They were practicing law that I didn't want to do. And I was uncertain whether, what I was going to do, actually. Whether I was going to stay in the military. I was offered a regular, I was a captain. I was offered a regular Army commission. Would have had a good career. I was a young company commander. I was uncertain. I was interviewed in a couple of government agencies. One would have taken me away for 3 months for another training program, which I didn't particularly want to go through. I thought about the FBI as a career, but I decided against all of that. So I just purely by chance walked by Continental Casualty Company. It was a nice looking building, and so I thought I'd go in and just curiosity. Would there be something that I might like to do? I had no idea if I would or wouldn't. So I went up to see the personnel director. He was a very poor personnel director. His attitude was very, very negative. And I was of two minds. One was to slug him. I thought that wouldn't be a good idea. So I went down to the lobby, looked at the directory. And there was a resident vice president, Bob Val-Reed. And I just walked into his office. And I said, "You've got a jerk as a personnel director." I was angry. And so he said, "You know, just down." We chatted for about a half hour, and I left there with a job. I became the youngest vice president in the history of that company, and I fired that personnel director.
Do you have a term you use in your book, and I'm sure elsewhere, for a model employee called the white blackbird?
White blackbird.
Could you tell us the origins of that term, and what are the traits of a white blackbird?
Somebody who's different, who doesn't follow the same mold that everybody else does, who thinks independently, who's not only got energy but conviction. I can go on and on.
And how do you tell that? How do you know that from meeting someone?
You sense it when you talk with them. If you don't, you're a lousy interrogator.
And you built a company with white blackbirds and a culture that I think you take pride in. One very almost military, I can say, disciplined around underwriting, around profit, around management, and open to innovation. How much of that culture was your personality and values versus something that you had to create?
Well, it's hard to separate the two. I think that, the mark of a good executive is one who doesn't try to be like everybody else, tries to be himself, number one, and himself is different from most others. You don't just try to follow in somebody else's footsteps to be like them. You want to be yourself, and yourself has got to be different than most others. You got to think independently. And if you don't think independently, what are you? You're just a copycat.
So you can't go out and copy what Steve Jobs did, for instance?
No, you want to be yourself.
Does the culture of a company change over time, or is it static?
No, it should change. It should evolve, because nothing stays still. The world evolves, the countries you're in evolve, products evolve, many things happen. Things are happening every day. New products are being developed, whether it's in the automobile industry, the aircraft industry, whatever industry you're in. Things are changing. Laws change, regulations change. You got to be sensitive to change.
And how does, what are you building at Starr? You find that the culture at Starr is similar to what you had at AIG, or how is it different?
It's carbon copy. Why shouldn't it be? Most of the people have come, from a company that I worked with before.
So you've got white blackbirds here at Starr.
A few.